Hello everybody, it's Whiskey11 and welcome back to the Gaming Lounge. In this video we're going to talk about the A-18C Hornet startup procedure in DCS World. I've already done a video on the Hornet startup procedure that kind of goes through what everyone else does with the APU and the battery switch. This video we're actually going to talk about a different method of starting up the Hornet using ground power and ground air supply in order to start the engines. We're also going to go over an engine crossbleed start just to show that you can in fact engine crossbleed start the F-18 Hornet. So let's get to it. First things first, why would we ever start the Hornet using ground power when we could just flick the battery switch, come over here and turn the APU on, and profit? Well, it's quite simple, really. In the real Hornet, you don't want to be running your APU for long extended periods of times while you're setting up all of your navigation and systems, like your radios. So, or for that fact, calibrating your INS. So what they do instead is they actually put the aircraft on ground power, and they do all of those procedures under ground power, as opposed to starting the APU, running it on battery, and starting engines. That wastes valuable fuel, which is a resource that is finite on board of, say, an aircraft carrier. The other time that you would use this is if you are sitting alert 5, like say on an aircraft carrier catapult, and you need to get the aircraft started up, you need to have everything ready to go, so that all you have to do is crank the APU switch on, start the right engine, start the left engine, disconnect the ground power, shoot off the catapult, and go intercept those bad guys that are coming hot towards the carrier or towards your airbase. The cross-bleed air start that we will be talking about later is a procedure that's only used on ground bases, not used very often on carriers, because it requires you to ramp up your right engine to 80% throttle at minimum, and that can cause damage or injuries to personnel on the flight deck if it's not approved prior to the procedure being done. So we'll show that just as something different. The other thing is DCS World is a game, and I think this is a cooler way to start a Hornet than starting the APU. Lastly, the other thing to remember is that the APU in the Hornet doesn't actually provide electrical power to the Hornet itself. So when you're starting it up, if you just start the APU, not only are you burning gas, but you're actually draining the battery. So if you've got everything started up, you got all the panels and stuff on, which you can't do because they won't actually turn on until an engine is started. If you've got that switch on, all you're doing is burning electrical power, and if the APU is running, you're burning gas. So let's start off by connecting the ground power, which, surprisingly, or not, if you're half intelligent, I'm not, you need to turn on the ground power. So, go into your radio menu, tell the chief to turn on the ground power.
Copy.
He says copy. Now you'll notice nothing is on. I can come down here to the lights.
Now on.
I can't even turn on lights. None of the lights work. What the heck? I thought we turned on the ground power. Well, we did. It's just that the Hornet is a little unique in that it actually, you have to flip some switches for it. You know, you gotta be a system operator in order to, fly a systems intensive computer like the Hornet is. So you come down here to your left-hand panel, and you'll see, up here's your light, some of your lighting panel, your anti-skid, flaps, jettison, parking brake. Down here is a panel entitled Ground Power, GNDPWR, Ground Power. You'll notice that there are 5 switches. One of them says EXT Power. That's going to be an important switch, but really all of these are important. You also see these 1, 2, 3, 4 switches, which have 3 different positions: an on position for A channel, a B channel on position, and an auto. These switches will be important, and I'll explain what they do here in a second. So in order for us to actually get this going, we've got our ground power connected. Again, battery is off, nothing is powered up. We need to come down here to this one that's marked EXT power, and we need to push it to the reset position for 4 seconds. So to do that, right click for 4 seconds. And you won't get any indications when this is done, so just kind of hold it there, and then release, and it'll go to the norm position. Now from here, we need to start up the various channels into their B channel setup. So we're going to set 1 to B, and you got to press and hold for 3 seconds. 2 to B, again, 3 seconds on the press and hold. That's going to be a left click. And left click on 4 for channel B. So from here, you can hear our annunciator. She decided to let us know that she's here. From here, we can switch on our MFDs. We can switch on our HUD, our DDI. We can switch on everything except for some of the electronic warfare stuff. That stuff is actually covered under this last channel, the channel 3 switch, that we didn't turn on. For traditional, just no rush, just starting up the aircraft so that we can enter in all of our waypoints down here on our HSI, we don't need this switch enabled because it's going to control like our RWR gear, raw gear. It's going to control our ECM stuff. It's also going to control our countermeasure systems, harm, FLIR, systems that aren't really all that important for the startup of a Hornet. For the purposes of an Alert 5 launch, however, you are going to actually have that switch on. So we'll go ahead and we'll turn it on even though we're not in Alert 5 switch, but you can see here it allows us to turn on, that was our RWR that we turned on, and if I flip it to the off position, you'll see that it actually turns the RWR back off. So we'll leave it off for now. We don't really need it. We'll turn on all of the RWR and defensive equipment as soon as we get ready to start the aircraft. So from here, we can go in and we can enter in all of our details. We can start our INS alignment. So we'll start our INS alignment. We'll do a stored heading one because it's quicker. Uncage that. We've stopped all of the bit from flashing at us. And from here, we're basically ready to start. So first things first, let's cycle that so we get rid of that. First things that we're going to do is we're going to flip the battery to the on position. We now finally need the battery switch. The next thing we're going to do is we need to examine the bleed air control knob. So that's going to be this guy right here. We need to switch this guy to off in order to do an air start. So with it in the off position, we are now ready to start the right engine. So let's get our ground crew to connect the ground air supply.
Chief, connect ground air supply. Copy. Ground air supply is now connected.
And the final step to have them do is to have them go ahead and apply ground air supply.
Chief, apply ground air supply. Copy. Air is now applied.
Okay, so they've applied air, but you notice none of our engines are actually spooling up. And, well, that's kind of annoying. I thought they were applying air. Well, the joke's on us. We just need to crank the right engine and it'll start. So you can see it's spooling up at 15%. We will go ahead and move the throttles into the idle position from the fuel cut position. And you'll see that it'll start up. Monitoring our temperatures to make sure they don't exceed 815 degrees. And there it catches. Perfect. Alright, so with our right engine started, we can go ahead and we can tell the crew to disconnect the air supply. If you wanted to do a traditional air start, you can do the left engine starts exactly the same way. You would come in here, come into the ground air supply, tell them to apply, crank the left engine, and it would start right up just fine. But I'm going to do a cross-bleed air start on the left engine just to show you how it's done. So for that, we can go ahead and we can disconnect the air supply. We can also come down here and confirm that the right engine generator is now turning. Alright, with it disconnected, we need to come back and visit our bleed air switch again. So we're going to cycle it all the way through norm, and then we're going to come to left off, or L off. So what engine bleed air is it's air that's taken off of the turbine, like in this case it would be the right engine turbine, and it's funneled through various different systems for the purposes of cooling, like the environmental control system, radar cooling, and other electronic cooling. It's also used to turn what's called the AMAD, which is the airframe mounted accessory drive. It is also used to turn the air turbine starter for the left or right engine, depending on which engine you start first. Both systems, both engines have the same ATS system, or ATS system. So in order to do an air start on the left engine, so we no longer have ground air supply connected. We've blocked off the bleed for the left engine because it doesn't have any... We don't want that bleed air to escape back into the bleed air system. We want it to stop in the engine and cause it to spool. So let's go ahead and let's crank the left engine and see what happens. Well, nothing happens, and that's exactly what we expect to have happen. In order to start the left engine using cross bleed air, you need to ramp the right engine up to at least 80% on the throttle and 1.9 or 1,900 pounds of fuel an hour. So we'll go ahead and ramp this up to 80%, and we'll start to see the left engine come alive. So there's the left engine spooling, and just like on the right engine, once it reaches 15, we move the throttles into the idle position from fuel cut. Monitor the engine temperature to make sure it does not exceed 815 on the start. And with the left engine started, we can roll the right engine back down to idle. So with this, you now have both your engines started, and you're effectively ready to go. You can start up your aircraft just like you would start it up any other way. You know, if you started it with the APU, you could go ahead and do all of your INS, get it aligned if you haven't already. As you can see, by the time you start this way, your INS is already finished, so that's an advantage of starting it this way. Plus, we saved more fuel doing it this way than we would have if we started it using the APU. Of course, it does take a little bit longer, but it's more fun as well. So I hope this video is educational and entertaining for you. Leave me a comment down in the comment section and let me know what you guys thought of it. If you haven't subscribed and liked the video already, go ahead and do that if you'd like. I appreciate it. And I hope to see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.